After my CEO wife went bankrupt, everyone assumed I'd take the money and run. After all, I was the handsome husband who only loved her for her money, spending her cash every day on frivolous pleasures. What they didn't know was that I planned to stick by her side and help her make a comeback. Once she was back on top, whatever trickled down from her success would be more than enough for my own financial freedom. But the real twist? Who would have guessed that my wife's bankruptcy was all an act? When I found myself transported into this novel, it was already at the very end. The beautiful CEO, my wife, was the villain who had just been defeated by the story's heroine. I still remembered the final passage about her. The only things Chloe Sterling had left were the husband lying in her bedroom and her collection of expensive watches and clothes. But Chloe knew that this man, who only ever wanted money and never paid her any mind, would soon take his watches and clothes and leave. She was destined to lose everything. I rubbed my temples, thinking about my supposedly bankrupt CEO wife, and let out a long sigh. Chloe Sterling had always treated me well since our wedding, and now, I couldn't bring myself to just grab the cash and ditch her at her lowest point. The least I could do was wait until she had some kind of income or a new venture going. After taking a moment to sort out my thoughts, I got up and started cleaning the messy apartment. It took me a solid 3 hours to cram everything into a corner of my own room. The pile was immense, with over 100 watches and at least 80 designer outfits. Right then, I desperately wished I could swap the clothes for more watches, since timepieces were so much easier to sell. I woke up at 2 p.m. to the sound of my stomach growling. I rummaged through the wallet on the coffee table and found an ID, a debit card, and about $700 in cash. I didn't even bother checking the kitchen. We had just moved in a couple of days ago, and since neither of us could cook, I knew it would be bare. I'd have to find food on my own. Luckily, while the apartment Chloe rented wasn't huge, it was in a nice complex with plenty of restaurants right downstairs. I wandered down and grabbed a quick bowl of ramen. Thinking about the sparse toiletries in the bathroom, I then headed to a nearby supermarket and came back with a bag full of daily necessities. I made sure to pick up things for Chloe too, choosing the colors and brands I remembered she preferred. Then I went back to cleaning the apartment. I opened the door to Chloe's room and saw that besides a few more items on her bookshelf and desk, there was only a bed and some bare essentials. I sighed, feeling a pang of sympathy. It must be tough for a woman who had been born into such luxury to put up with this kind of life. There wasn't much to clean in her room, so I just wiped down the desk, organized some papers, and then closed the door and went back to the living room to tackle the rest of the mess. By the time the entire place was clean, it was already 10 p.m. I washed up, feeling satisfied, and set my late-night snack on the coffee table, ready to relax and eat. Just as I unwrapped my food and was about to take the first bite, the front door clicked open. I looked up and my eyes met a pair of stunningly clear ones. The woman stood there, her face an emotionless mask, but as her gaze swept over the newly cleaned apartment, a flicker of surprise crossed her features before her eyes landed back on me. I took the opportunity to size her up as well. She was an incredibly striking woman, truly living up to every flattering description the author had written. Feeling Chloe's eyes on me, I unconsciously tightened my grip on my fork, a knot of nervousness forming in my stomach. I was an imposter, after all. Could someone as sharp as Chloe really fail to notice that her husband was not himself? Her gaze made me feel like she could see right through me. "Did you hire a cleaning service? Do you still have enough money?" she asked. I shook my head instinctively. "No, I did it myself." "You cleaned it?" Chloe was clearly surprised. I took a deep breath and met her gaze. "Yes, I did." Her face was a picture of disbelief as she stared at me. We held each other's gaze for a moment before she finally looked away first. "Do you have enough money?" she asked again. "I do. How about you?" I replied out of habit. The question made her look at me with renewed surprise before she slowly answered, "Enough." After that, an awkward silence fell between us. Chloe glanced at the takeout I was eating and suddenly said, "I'm sorry." Took me a second to register. I followed her gaze to my food and quickly shook my head. No, you have absolutely nothing to be sorry for." Chloe walked over and sat down on the opposite sofa, choosing her words carefully. "The financial matters are mostly settled. All the assets in our names have been liquidated. While there isn't much left, we're not in debt, so you don't have to worry about that. I have about $30,000 left, and once everything is finalized, I'll start earning again as soon as I can. You should still have $60,000 on your card, and I've already paid the rent on this place for the next 6 months. If you want a divorce, I'll give you another $20,000. You can continue to live here until you find a new place." I knew she was being incredibly generous, practically bending over backward for me. Our total net worth was only $90,000. If we divorced, She was willing to give me $80,000 of it and let me stay here rent-free. She obviously wouldn't ask for the watches and clothes back, which meant she'd be left with just her room and $10,000. When I didn't respond, Chloe continued, "The money I make in the future, I'll give you a portion of it each month, at least $3,000 a month, okay? I can't promise more right now because I don't know what the future holds. If I get a chance to rebuild my career, I'll make it up to you." Quickly shook my head. Chloe fell silent, a stillness coming over her. Realizing my gesture might have been misinterpreted, I rushed to explain. "No, that's not what I meant. I don't want a divorce, and I don't need your money. Don't worry, I have enough to get by. I've accepted our new reality. I'll be more careful with my spending, and I'll start earning my own money." "You don't want a divorce? But yesterday you said." Chloe hadn't expected this. Her words jogged my memory. The original me had indeed thrown a fit yesterday, calling her useless and demanding a divorce. My expression froze. "Oh, I was drunk. I didn't mean any of it. I've thought it through. I can't divorce you right now. We're married, and from now on, I'll pull my own weight. You don't have to worry about me. I can definitely support myself, and maybe I can even support you." As I said this, Chloe gave me a very strange look but didn't press the issue. "If you don't want a divorce, then fine. Just let me know when you change your mind." Chloe stood, rubbing her temples, the exhaustion evident in her expression as she headed to the bathroom to wash up. I awkwardly looked down and kept eating. I heard her footsteps pause for a few seconds after she entered the bathroom. She must have noticed how different it looked now that it was clean and organized. Then I heard the water running. By the time I finished my food, Chloe had emerged from the bathroom. It wasn't the awkward scene I'd braced myself for. She was decently covered in a robe, and with that gorgeous face, she murmured a thank you before heading to her room. Just before closing the door, she added politely, "You should get to bed early too." I scratched my head, the whole situation feeling surreal. After collecting my thoughts, I went to wash up, then returned to my room. I opened my laptop and quickly set up a seller account on eBay before finally shutting it down and going to sleep. The next morning, I woke up at 6:30, just out of habit. I got up, prepped the ingredients I'd bought the day before, put some oatmeal on the stove, and then ran downstairs to buy some bagels and pastries. When I got back, Chloe was just stepping out of her room. She heard the door, looked up, and upon seeing the breakfast in my hands, she rubbed her eyes as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Morning," I said, holding up the bag. "I bought some bagels and made oatmeal. You should go get ready." With that, I walked into the kitchen to check on the oatmeal, pointedly ignoring the look of utter astonishment I could feel on my back. Since we'd both been running on fumes lately, I figured we could use a boost, so I'd made oatmeal with dates and berries. It was just about done, so I served 2 bowls, arranged the bagels and pastries on a plate, boiled a couple of eggs, and put out some fruit. When Chloe came out of the bathroom, she was greeted by the sight of a surprisingly hearty breakfast spread on the table. It should have been a heartwarming scene, but Chloe felt nothing of the sort. She knew her husband. In their 3 years of marriage, he had never once cooked or done a single chore. The only thing he was good at was spending money. The background check she'd run on him before they married never mentioned any of these skills. Had he been pretending this whole time? The calculating look in her eyes was impossible to miss, so I deployed the excuse I'd come up with the night before. "We always had cooks and housekeepers before, so I never needed to. Now that it's just the 2 of us and money is tight, we can't just eat out all the time. My cooking isn't amazing, but it's decent enough. If you don't mind, you can eat at home from now on." "So, when my grandfather asked you if you knew how to cook, you lied to him?" Chloe asked, sitting down across from me. After she spoke, she took a spoonful of oatmeal. I froze. "That happened?" I quickly tried to laugh it off. "My cooking is nothing compared to a professional chef's. I figured your grandfather was used to the finest cuisine, so I was too embarrassed to offer my humble skills." The excuse seemed to work, more or less. Chloe nodded. "It's actually not bad." Chloe finished her oatmeal quickly but only had 1 bagel and a small piece of a pastry. Watching her eat so elegantly, it dawned on me. For a woman with such a refined palate, used to the best of everything, eating this simple fare must have been a challenge. After breakfast, Chloe offered to help clear the table, but I stopped her. "Don't worry about it, I'll take care of the dishes. You go ahead and do what you need to do." She put down her napkin. "I still have assets to deal with. I'll probably be back late tonight. Don't wait up for me. Call me if you need anything." "All right, you go on." Once Chloe was out the door, I could finally relax. Even when she tried to tone it down, there was an undeniable air of aristocracy about her, an intimidating presence that never fully disappeared. If I hadn't encountered people like her before in my past life, I'm not sure I could have handled the pressure. I had a lot on my plate today too. I needed to buy a few things for the apartment, and I had to photograph all those watches and clothes to list them online. Selling everything could probably bring in over $1 million, which would give Chloe the seed money she needed for her next move. On top of that, I needed to research this world's online fiction scene and consider getting back to my old job. That's right, I'm a web novelist. I majored in interior design in college, but after graduating, I decided I didn't want it as my main career and started writing instead. I'd pick up freelance gigs here and there, writing ad copy and things like that. I had plenty of ways to make money and had always lived comfortably. After washing the dishes, I grabbed my shopping list and headed out. I've never been one for browsing, so I bought what I needed, came straight back, put it all away, and then started photographing the watches and clothes. I worked straight through until evening, completely exhausted, and had only managed to finish photographing the watches. I heated up a leftover bagel from the morning, took a few bites, and then retreated to my room to browse online fiction. I was done with physical labor for the day. It was time for some mental work. 2 hours later, I clapped my hands in delight and downed the rest of my coffee. The online novels here were a few years behind what I was used to. I could rewrite my old stories, but better this time. It was a fantastic opportunity. Just then, I heard the front door open. I hesitated for a second before jumping out of bed, sliding into my slippers, and rushing out. I had to. I'd noticed this morning that the door hadn't been deadbolted last night. Chloe was probably so used to the security of her mansion that she'd forgotten you have to lock doors like this yourself. Chloe paused, her coat halfway onto the hook, as she saw me hurry out. "You're back," I said, rushing past her to slide the deadbolt into place. "I noticed this morning it wasn't locked last night. You're probably used to having security, but with a door like this, you have to bolt it at night. Otherwise, it's way too easy for someone to break in." "I understand," she said. We were practically strangers, so I felt compelled to break the silence. "Have you eaten?" "Yes. I bought some more household supplies today. If you need anything, just let me know, and I'll pick it up." "I don't need anything at the moment." And that was the end of that conversation. What else was there to say? After a 3-second pause, I decided to make my exit. "All right then, I'm heading back to my room. Just shout if you need me." Only after I had closed my door did Chloe survey the apartment. She walked through the kitchen and the bathroom, noticing the new items that had appeared, giving the place a more lived-in feel. There was even a small plant on the windowsill now. Chloe looked up, a curious, unreadable smile touching her lips. So, this man was actually planning on staying? It was as if he'd become a completely different person. I, of course, had no idea what Chloe was thinking. I was completely absorbed in cleaning up the laptop. The original owner of this body had apparently worked hard enough in high school to get into a good college, but he'd coasted through his university years. His computer skills were atrocious, and this laptop was painfully slow. I needed to wipe it clean and see what kind of digital life he'd been living. As I sifted through the files, I found the photo folder. It contained numerous subfolders, mostly filled with the guy's own selfies, with a smaller collection of his parents' pictures. The last folder had a garbled name. I clicked it open and, oh boy, it was full of pictures of him with a woman. She had the look of a socialite and was definitely attractive, just not my type. She had a certain vibe, especially when she smiled, that screamed innocent and delicate in a manipulative way. Seeing how close they were in the photos sent a shiver down my spine. I quickly checked the dates on the files. Thank God, they were all from before his marriage to Chloe. That was a close call. I kept a couple of the less intimate photos and deleted the rest immediately. It all came back to me then. This woman was his college girlfriend, some wealthy heiress. They had broken up ages ago. There was absolutely no reason to hang on to these pictures. It was a good thing Chloe wasn't the jealous type. If she had found these, it would have been a ticking time bomb. By the time I finished cleaning up the laptop, it was almost 11 p.m. I yawned and collapsed into bed. The next morning, I was up even earlier. Instead of buying breakfast, I decided to make some scrambled eggs and toast. By the time Chloe woke up, everything was ready, so she could eat as soon as she was done in the bathroom. "You know how to cook?" Chloe asked, looking at the plate of eggs and toast, her perception of me clearly shifting again. "Yeah, I'm not a chef or anything, but I can handle the basics. It's nothing fancy, just edible, so I hope you don't mind." Chloe took a bite. "It's good. Actually, it's very good." "Glad you like it," I mumbled, my mind already on my to-do list for the day. "I'll be home for lunch today," she announced. I was taken aback for a second before quickly recovering. "What would you like to eat?" "I'll have whatever you're making. Something simple is fine." I thought for a moment. "How about I make some roasted chicken, a tomato and mozzarella salad, and some soup? Will that be enough?" "That sounds fine." "Okay, then you can head out and not worry about it." After breakfast, Chloe grabbed her coat and left, leaving me to clean up the dishes as usual. Outside the complex, she slipped into a car waiting at the curb. The driver was her former assistant, Grace Callahan, a childhood friend handpicked by her grandfather to be her companion. As soon as Chloe settled into the car, Grace handed her a paper bag. "Chloe, I got you something from that cafe you like." "No, thank you. I already ate. Ethan made breakfast." "What?" Grace's hand froze midair. "Ethan can cook?" "It's news to me, too. He made oatmeal yesterday, which I thought was a miracle in itself. When he claimed he could cook, I assumed he was exaggerating, but then he made a full breakfast this morning. I told him I'd be home for lunch, and he even offered to make a whole meal." Listening to this uncharacteristic report from Chloe, Grace frowned. "You don't think he's up to something, do you? I thought you two had an understanding to stay out of each other's way, and he was completely useless. By the way, wasn't he the one demanding a divorce? I already looked up the legal steps for you." Why the sudden silence on his end? Chloe looked up, a thoughtful smile playing on her lips. "He said he doesn't want a divorce anymore. He said he's accepted our new situation, that he's going to live properly from now on, even earn his own money, and told me not to put too much pressure on myself." She leaned back in her seat, her tone unreadable as she let out a soft, skeptical laugh. "Maybe he couldn't stand to see you struggling and decided he wants to stick with you through thick and thin? If that's the case, he might be a decent guy after all." Chloe's voice was flat. "He wasted his time in college and has done nothing but spend my money for the last 2 years. One day he's screaming for a divorce, the next he's a changed man. What do you make of it?" Grace was at a loss for words. After a moment, she offered, "Well, they say adversity reveals a person's true character. Maybe his conscience kicked in. You never know who someone really is until things get tough. We've certainly seen enough people show their true colors lately. Perhaps Ethan is just one of those people whose quality only shines through in a crisis." "Perhaps," Chloe said, sounding unconcerned. "Let's go. It's not like he can affect my plans. We'll just have to wait and see." Meanwhile, I spent the entire morning photographing clothes. There was no way I could wear over 80 designer outfits. I figured I'd keep about a dozen to look presentable and sell the rest. I could use the money to buy some normal clothes. After more than 2 hours, I was only halfway done. I glanced at the clock in the living room. It was already 10 a.m. Realizing I needed to buy groceries for lunch, I quickly packed up the clothes, threw on a jacket, and headed out. Leaving the supermarket with 2 large grocery bags, I started walking back to the apartment complex. Just as I crossed the street, I heard someone call my name. I turned and saw a beautiful, impeccably dressed woman. A closer look confirmed it. It was the woman from the photos on the laptop. The moment she saw me turn, she rushed over. "Ethan, what happened to you?" I glanced down at my casual clothes and the groceries in my hands, confused. "Is something wrong? What are you doing in a place like this?" "I heard Chloe Sterling went bankrupt, so I came to find you. Look at you carrying groceries. Don't tell me you're actually cooking for yourself now? You should leave her and come back to me." I thought I must have misheard her. "I'm sorry, what?" She put on a look of profound love. "Leave Chloe and come back to me. I can give you a much better life. It breaks my heart to see you suffering like this. Come back with me, and I promise I'll take good care of you." If it weren't for my memories of this woman, I might have actually been moved by the supposed love in her eyes. Tiffany Reed, second daughter of the Reed Corporation and the original Ethan's ex-girlfriend. Back when they were together, she had enjoyed his devotion while simultaneously mocking him for being a gold digger. Despite her wealth, she never spent a dime on him. He paid for everything in their relationship, and she treated him like he was at her beck and call, always with an air of superiority. It was only when Chloe made her marriage offer that Tiffany suddenly pretended to be deeply in love, trying to convince him to turn Chloe down. The original Ethan had been genuinely in love with her, scrimping and saving every penny he had to spend on her, terrified she'd think he wasn't good enough. But she was only ever playing with his feelings. Luckily, he was rational enough that he hadn't completely fallen for her act. In fact, he had been on the verge of rejecting Chloe's offer. But by a stroke of luck, he happened to see Tiffany kissing one of his best friends, bragging that she was just toying with Ethan's emotions. That's what finally made him see the truth. And that's why he became convinced that money was the only thing you could rely on, which turned him into the spendthrift he became. You could say Tiffany was responsible for at least half of his tragic mindset. And now this awful woman was showing up again, and it definitely wasn't because she was in love. I didn't know what her angle was, but I knew it wasn't good. I could think of at least 3 motives. First, Chloe used to be someone she could only look up to from afar. Now that Chloe had fallen, stealing her husband would be a huge ego boost. Second, if I left Chloe, it would be another public humiliation for her, and Tiffany probably wanted to kick her while she was down. Third, she never truly had the original Ethan under her thumb, and her pride couldn't take it, so she was determined to win this time. I couldn't guess what other reasons she might have, but I was sure it wasn't simple. So I just shook my head. I'm not going with you. You should just go back to wherever you came from. Why? She demanded. Chloe Sterling is finished. She'll only drag you down into misery. What could you possibly want from her? I sighed, thinking of the man whose life I now inhabited, and my expression hardened. A husband and wife are supposed to be there for each other, for better or for worse. I'm her husband, so of course I'm going to stay by her side. I can't just abandon her, no matter what happens. This is just a temporary setback for her, but even if she were permanently disabled, I'd still have to take care of her. It's not about money or hardship. As long as we're married, I can't abandon her, especially not now when she needs me most. What are you talking about? You're not making any sense, Tiffany said, looking at me like I was a complete idiot. If I remember correctly, you two barely even spoke to each other. She just gave you money to go shopping. You have no emotional connection, so why would you choose to suffer with her? Who says she wasn't good to me? When she had money, she gave me a generous allowance every month. She might not have had time for me, but I could buy whatever I wanted. That money might have been nothing to her, but nobody's money just appears out of thin air. Her giving it to me was a kindness, not an obligation. And since she gave it, I owe her for that kindness. Now that she's hit a rough patch, even if we were to divorce, she's offered to let me stay in the apartment and give me the majority of what little money she has left. She's been more than decent to me. Tiffany stared in disbelief. And you call that being treated well? If that's not being treated well, what is? We never had a romantic connection, so for her to act with such decency is remarkable. You say she's no good, but are you any better? How am I not good? If you were with me, I'd treat you wonderfully. Before she could go on, I cut her off. Let's talk about good. In college, when I had no money, you always looked down on me, convinced I was just trying to leech off you. In the 2 years we dated, you never spent a single cent. The gifts you gave me were free samples you got with your own purchases. Meanwhile, I worked part-time jobs just to have money to spend on you, only for you to turn around and hook up with my friend. Is that what you call good? I ignored her sour expression and pressed on. And you're not here today because you love me. You're here because you think stealing Chloe's husband will cause her more pain. If you really loved me, why didn't you show up before she lost everything? I fell for your act back then because I actually liked you. But ever since I realized what a toxic person you are, my eyes have been wide open. I'm not an idiot. What are you talking about? What kind of person do you think I am? Tiffany's eyes darkened. Did Chloe say something to poison you against me? You're giving yourself way too much credit. A woman like Chloe wouldn't waste her breath talking about you to me. She probably doesn't even know you exist. You're the one who's obsessed with her, constantly trying to get her attention. It's like the old saying goes, you see the world as you are. Now, you should probably leave. I'd rather not say anything harsher. Her gaze grew even colder as she stepped closer, her expression shifting to one of fragile vulnerability. Ethan, Chloe must have brainwashed you. How could you think such things? I'm the one who really loves you. She's just clinging to you now because she's broke. You can't be this naive. Stop. Don't come any closer, I yelled, holding up a hand. Look, abandoning your wife when she's at her lowest is something only a monster would do. I'm not leaving her now, so you can just give up. If I ever leave, it will be because she's back on her feet and doesn't need me anymore. Tiffany opened her mouth to argue, but she was cut off by a sudden burst of applause from nearby. Well said, young man. That's right, an older woman called out. He's got his head on straight. That's right, another chimed in. If more people thought like that, there wouldn't be so many divorces. You're a good man. Your wife is lucky to have you. I finally noticed a group of seniors nearby, clearly on their way home from their morning walk in the park. They ambled over, and the man in the lead gave Tiffany a thorough look over before shaking his head. TSK. Young lady, the man is with his wife. It's not right to come here and try to break up a marriage. Imagine if you were married, and some woman was always trying to steal your husband. How would that make you feel? Don't do to others what you wouldn't want them to do to you. A woman in a red tracksuit stepped forward. Exactly. You say he should leave his wife just because she's out of money. Can you guarantee you'll never fall on hard times yourself? It was like a floodgate had opened. The entire group started laying into Tiffany, not giving her a single chance to defend herself. In a matter of moments, they had branded her a morally bankrupt, irredeemable homewrecker. I quickly stepped aside to give them room, trying my best to hide my smile. She really needed a lecture, and they were just the people to give it. Well, I need to get home and make lunch. I announced to the group. I'll head off now. Maybe we can chat again some other time. The man in the lead waved me off. Don't worry, son. You go on home. We've got this. Not far away, Chloe and Grace sat in their parked car, having witnessed the entire exchange. They watched until Tiffany finally, meekly, admitted she was wrong and was allowed to escape by the seniors. Grace finally broke the silence, her voice filled with disbelief. Chloe, that was Ethan, right? I feel like I was watching a completely different person. This was the first time Chloe had ever seen her husband act this way. She'd never really paid him any attention before. It was him, she confirmed. Wow, then Ethan is actually a really good guy. All I knew before was that he was a spendthrift, but now that you're supposedly bankrupt, he's refusing to leave, choosing to stick it out with you. And not even for love, but out of pure principle. Just like those seniors said, his moral compass is spot on. Chloe had to admit that her perception of me might have been seriously flawed. After dropping Grace off, she headed straight home. The moment she opened the door, she saw me curled up on the living room rug with my laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. The apartment was filled with the delicious smell of cooking. You're back, I said, glancing up from the screen without breaking my typing rhythm. I was just thinking, I've forgotten most of my college major, but I've always been a big reader and I know the online fiction market pretty well. I'm thinking of trying my hand at writing a web novel. You don't mind, do you? I asked, my fingers still moving. Chloe figured it suited my personality. It wasn't like she was counting on me to bring in an income anyway. Whatever makes you happy, she said non-committally. I knew a powerhouse like her probably looked down on this sort of thing, so I quickly changed the subject. I've got some short ribs braising. It'll be about an hour until dinner. You can go get your work done. Chloe nodded, then went to wash up and change before disappearing into her room. An hour later, I knocked on her door to call her for dinner. The table was set with 2 bowls of rice and several colorful, beautifully arranged dishes. I'd even added a garnish. It was clear I'd put some effort into it. It's my first time making sweet and sour ribs, so I'm not sure how they turned out. Give them a try. If they're no good, I can whip up a quick salad, I said, sitting down across from her and picking up my own bowl. Ever since my parents passed away in college, I'd been living on my own. Thanks to my parents, my standards for living weren't extravagant, but they weren't low either. I kept my place clean, cooked for myself whenever I had the time, and lived a very structured life, so I was perfectly capable. I was just being modest now. I wouldn't call myself a great chef, but I was a decent home cook. I was always the one cooking at gatherings with friends, and I'd gotten plenty of compliments. Chloe picked up a piece of rib, tasted it, and nodded. It's good. Very tasty. Great, then eat up. The last few days have been chaotic for you. You haven't been eating or sleeping properly. You've been through a lot. I poured her a glass of iced tea I'd made and pushed it toward her. It's lemon tea with a little honey. Good for vitamin C. Drink as much as you like. Hope it's not too tart. Chloe studied me with a questioning look. She couldn't shake the feeling that the man before her was a complete stranger, nothing like the person from her background checks or the man she'd lived with for 2 years. Then again, she'd never paid him much attention. She couldn't be certain her information was flawless, so she pushed her doubts aside. Thank you for this, Chloe said slowly, taking a sip of the tea. Not at all, I said with a smile. I'm the one who gets to stay home all day. You're the one out there dealing with everything. That must be exhausting. You should eat more. I knew just from what I'd read that Chloe had always been in a league of her own. When her grandfather was alive, nobody dared to cross the Sterling family. And Chloe herself had been a prodigy since childhood, the standard by which countless other children were judged and found wanting by their own parents. Now that her grandfather was gone, the extended branches of the Sterling family were only interested in carving up the remaining assets for themselves. They were eager to see Chloe fail completely. They wouldn't lift a finger to help. In fact, they'd relish the chance to kick her while she was down and see the woman they once had to admire crushed beneath their feet. When I first read the novel, I never understood why Chloe was so insistent on not accepting help from her close friends. If she had, she wouldn't have ended up in this mess. Unfortunately, our relationship wasn't exactly close, so I couldn't just ask her. I figured that a woman like her must have her reasons. I have no idea what Chloe thought of the meal, but I certainly enjoyed it. I guess she didn't hate it since she had 2 helpings. I'll just leave the dishes in the sink for now. Don't worry about them. I'll wash them after I wake up from my nap, I said, clearing the table. I rinsed some fruit, put it on the coffee table, and went back to my spot on the floor to write. Rewriting something I'd already written before was naturally a fast process. My typing speed was already excellent, so I'd managed to bang out a 2,000-word outline that morning. At this pace, I figured I could have 20,000 words ready to submit by tomorrow. Chloe and I were in a tough spot and desperately needed money. I didn't know the first thing about business, so the only way I could help was to earn what I could to ease her burden. Chloe retreated to her room again, and I had no idea what she was doing behind the closed door. Around 1:30 p.m., I forced myself to shut down the laptop and go take a nap, plunging the living room into silence. In her room, Chloe hesitated for a moment before typing a reply on iMessage to her friend. "Hold off on that investigation for now. I want to see what he does next. Maybe I'm just overthinking things. Let's wait." Less than an hour later, my alarm went off. I dragged myself out of bed, my head still fuzzy with sleep. I stumbled to the bathroom and found the door was shut. Muttering to myself, I grabbed the handle and slid the door open. I was about to step inside when I looked up and made direct eye contact with the person on the toilet. I forced a calm, blank expression onto my face, slid the door shut, and fighting the urge to scream, called out, "Sorry, I'm still half asleep. I forgot you were home." My face burning, I scrambled back to my room and shut the door, wishing the floor would swallow me whole. Walking in on my wife, even a wife in name only, while she was on the toilet was mortifying. It took me a while to compose myself before I dared to leave my room. As luck would have it, Chloe was just exiting the bathroom, and our eyes met again from across the hall. A blush colored her cheeks, but she maintained her composure. "It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's a small apartment. We're bound to run into each other. We'll get used to it." Right. Get used to it?" I nodded, then asked, "Are you staying in this afternoon?" "I finished my errands for the day, so I'm staying home." Then she added, "Actually, I'm going to be out of town for a few days. Is there anything you need help with before I go?" Her question made me a little nervous. "Why? Is something wrong?" Even though I grew up in the Sterling household, I'm not completely useless when it comes to basic life skills, she said, her tone serious. "Since we're living together in this small space now, you can just tell me if you need help with something. I can do more than just make money." "Oh, okay, I get it." Seeing her so earnest, I found it surprisingly endearing. Whether she was a business tycoon or bankrupt, there was no denying she was stunningly beautiful. As the novel's most gorgeous character, she was captivating even when her face was a complete blank. I had to give myself credit for not being completely smitten by her. After her little speech, she gave me one last, meaningful look and went back to her room. Just then, a thought occurred to me. I jumped up and ran to her door. "Hey, what do you want for dinner tonight?" "Whatever. I'm not picky." Her clear voice came from inside. Okay, so the princess wasn't as high maintenance as I'd imagined. I went back to my spot and kept writing. After finishing a chapter, I remembered my eBay listings and quickly pulled up the site to check on them. Wow, 12 watches and 2 outfits had already sold. I didn't really know the value of luxury goods, so I just looked up their retail prices online and listed them for 20% off. A lot of the items were still brand new in their boxes, but I didn't want to price them too high in case Chloe needed the cash quickly. I'd been worried they were too expensive and wouldn't sell, but they were moving surprisingly fast. I copied down all the shipping addresses, saved the document, and then went to my room to find the sold items. Since there was a lot to ship, I decided to schedule a courier pickup. Half an hour later, everything was boxed up just as the courier arrived. The noise must have drawn Chloe out of her room. "What are you doing?" she asked, her brow furrowing as she took in the scene. As the courier scanned the packages, I answered without looking up. "All those clothes and watches were just taking up space, and it's not like I have anywhere to wear them now, so I decided to sell some of them off. These are today's sales. I need to get them shipped out to the buyers." Chloe grabbed the hand holding my phone. "Don't. We're not so desperate that you need to sell your things." I chose my words carefully. "It's not about that. They're just taking up space, and they're not even the latest models anymore. I'll never wear them, so I might as well turn them into cash. That way, I can buy something new I actually like later on. That should be enough to preserve her pride, right?" I thought I was being pretty tactful. I don't know what I said that got to her, but her hand trembled slightly before she let go of my wrist. She didn't try to stop me again. "Fine," she said. "We'll buy you new ones later." "Buy new ones?" As if one of those watches cost more than my living expenses for 6 months. A few more and I'd be broke. I kept the thought to myself, of course. A woman like her had her pride to maintain. I put on a bright smile. "Okay, I'll be waiting for you to buy me those new watches." The smile on my familiar, yet lately so unfamiliar, face seemed to catch her off guard. She glanced down, saw the boxes on the floor, and bent over to help the courier place them in his large sack. After the courier had left, Chloe finally asked, "How much are you planning to sell?" I thought for a second. There were over 100 watches and about 80 outfits. More than 70 of the watches are still new in the box, so I'll sell all of those. Of the used ones, I'll sell another 40 or so and keep 10 for myself. As for the clothes, I'll keep around 30 outfits and sell the rest. I expected her to object, but she just nodded without another word, picked up an apple from the fruit bowl, and started peeling it on the sofa. I couldn't read her at all, and I worried that my actions might have wounded her pride. Still, survival was more important than feelings. Even if she was upset, there was nothing I could do. I'd done some research that morning. The real estate market in this world was only halfway through its boom. I had no idea what Chloe's plans were, or if she'd ever truly make a comeback. But regardless, I had to figure out a way to buy a place of our own. The money from the watches and clothes would be enough for a down payment. I could give the rest to Chloe and then slowly pay off the mortgage myself. That way, even if she never rebuilt her empire, we'd at least have a roof over our heads. My mind was racing as I stared blankly at my laptop screen. Suddenly, a perfectly peeled apple appeared in my line of sight, its sweet scent filling the air. The peel had been removed in one long, elegant spiral. My mouth watered as I realized Chloe was holding it out for me. For me? I asked, pointing at my chest. She pushed the apple a little closer. For putting up with all this. I was floored. The Chloe from the novel was famously aloof and had zero patience for men. Now here she was, peeling an apple for me, and doing it so perfectly. It was astonishing. I quickly took the apple from her. It's nothing, I said. They were bought with your money in the first place. I'm just grateful you never gave me a hard time for spending so much of it. To my surprise, Chloe actually smiled. She usually wore such a cool, distant expression, not exactly icy, but enough to keep people at arm's length. But when she smiled, I was completely captivated. How could anyone be that beautiful? I'll definitely buy you more watches in the future, she promised. I nodded automatically, then felt a little embarrassed. I know you'll make a comeback. Don't rush it. I'll be waiting for those new watches. I even gave her a little fist pump. You can do it. I know you can. With that same faint smile, Chloe got up and went back to her room. Once she was out of my sight, a flicker of amusement danced in her eyes. I spent the rest of the afternoon writing and managed to churn out another 10,000 words. We had a simple dinner and then went back to our separate activities. I worked late into the night, and by midnight, I had hit my 20,000-word goal. The next morning, after Chloe left for the day, I started preparing my manuscript for submission. I also checked my eBay page and saw that another 8 watches and an outfit had sold. Picturing the money flowing into my account put me in an excellent mood. I had just finished formatting and submitting my manuscript when someone knocked on the door. Who is it? I called out, getting up to answer. It's me, Julian Vance, a man's voice replied. The name didn't ring a bell. I racked my brain as I walked to the door but came up empty. I opened the door to find a man with a kind of smug, roguish charm. He gave me a slow, appraising look from head to toe that immediately put me on edge. Aren't you going to invite me in? Julian Vance said, already trying to push his way past me. I had no idea who this guy was, so I blocked his path. Who are you looking for? If you're Ethan, I'm looking for you, he said, sidestepping me and slipping into the apartment. Chloe isn't here, is she? Since he was already inside, I couldn't very well throw him out. I closed the door, poured him a glass of water, and set it on the coffee table. No, she left early this morning. What do you want with me? Of course I want something. Let's be honest. You're a good-looking guy, but you have no family connections and no skills. Marrying you was a huge step down for Chloe. I know her grandfather arranged it to repay some old debt, but you've been married for years and have done nothing to help her career. All you do is shop and fool around. Have you no shame? I cut him off. Can I ask who you are to Chloe? Julian puffed out his chest. Chloe and I are childhood sweethearts. She's always been very fond of me. If it weren't for you, we'd probably be together by now. I searched my memories again but came up with nothing. That's funny. I've never heard her mention you. Of course you haven't. Why would she talk to you about her childhood sweetheart? He had a point. Chloe wouldn't have discussed something like that with the original Ethan. They weren't close and it wasn't her style. I nodded. So, why are you here? Chloe is in desperate need of help right now. How can you stand there and continue to be a burden to her? My father has agreed to help her rebuild her company, on the condition that she and I get married. So, you need to divorce her. If Chloe wants a divorce, she can tell me herself. Why would she send you? I'm not going to cling to her. Unless, of course, this is just your idea and not hers at all. Julian shot me a disgusted look. Chloe is too classy to do something like that herself. Of course she's too embarrassed to bring it up. You're the one who needs to do the right thing. You've spent a fortune of her money and done nothing for her, yet she's never given you a hard time. Now that she's in trouble, the least you can do is get out of her way. If you initiate the divorce, she can agree to it, and no one loses face. Is this what Chloe wants? I asked again, sticking to the point. It's what I want. Julian snapped impatiently. Don't you get it? Chloe would never ask this of you. It's up to us to help her. You divorce her, then I can marry her, and then my father will step in to help. But I just shook my head. If this is what Chloe wants, I have no problem filing for divorce. But since you admit this is your idea, let me ask you something. Before Chloe and I got married, were you two a couple? Was she in love with you? Julian froze, the glass halfway to his lips. That's not important. She's not very good at expressing her feelings. Besides, it's not like she loves you. I can help her, and you can only hold her back. I'm 100 times better for her than you are. You're wrong, I said, shaking my head again. Maybe I don't know Chloe perfectly, but I'm certain she would never accept your father's help, especially if the price is marrying you. You think you're doing her a favor, but have you considered what would happen to her reputation? If she rebuilds her career by marrying into your family, she'll forever be known as the woman who married for money. I didn't know her well, but I knew the character from the book. She was not the type to accept a handout. In fact, her unwillingness to compromise was what got her into trouble in the first place. A woman like that would never trade her own marriage for a business deal. At least not yet. I wasn't opposed to divorcing Chloe, but I wasn't going to be bullied into it by this guy. I made my position clear. It was Chloe's decision, and I would respect whatever she chose. You just want to cling to her and refuse to let go. Julian exploded as if I'd struck a nerve. How can you be so selfish? Chloe has been more than generous with you, and now that she finally has a chance to get back on her feet, you're going to ruin it for her? You're disgusting. Mr. Vance, I've been more than patient with you, I said, my voice turning cold. You show up here unannounced and say a lot of inappropriate things. Anyone listening would think you're trying to be a homewrecker. Since when is my marriage to Chloe any of your business? Even if you think you're helping her, coming to me like this is completely out of line. If you want to help her, go talk to her. I can't make her decisions for her, and I'm not going to fight a divorce if that's what she wants. Think about it for a second. If she really loved you, why weren't you married before her grandfather approached me? If the timing wasn't right, why weren't you even dating? You claim she's a woman of integrity, but you're here trying to get me to betray her, without any thought for the consequences she would face. Julian's face flushed with anger. Who are you to lecture me? You're nothing but a kept man who only knows how to spend money. I'm her husband, I said, standing my ground. And as long as I am, I have every right to call out anyone who tries to interfere in our marriage. I stood up straighter. It's true that I used to do nothing but spend her money, but that was our arrangement. She never had a problem with it, so why should you? If you want to marry her, go and tell her that. If she agrees, I'll sign the divorce papers without a second thought. But trying to convince me behind her back is not going to work. You're shameless. Julian slammed his glass down on the table. I was calm now, swirling the water in my own glass. You're the one trying to break up a marriage, and you have the nerve to call me shameless? If that's what you think of me, then I believe this conversation is over. Julian was practically hyperventilating with rage. So you're just refusing to divorce her? I nodded. You can think of it that way if you like. Realizing he wasn't going to get what he wanted, Julian stormed out of the apartment. Before he left, he shot back one last insult. You bastard. Just you wait. Chloe will dump you eventually. The door slammed shut, and I let out a long sigh. It's one thing for the story's heroine to have suitors, but for the villain to have them lining up too. If my conscience didn't bother me, I'd actually be fine with a divorce. But it was just a fleeting thought. I couldn't just take over this guy's body and then shirk his responsibilities. Even though I wasn't the one who spent all that money, it was on my tab now, wasn't it? Pushing the incident out of my mind, I went back to my laptop, recorded the new sales and addresses, and then gathered the sold items from my room. After packing them up, I called the courier for another pickup. I wanted to get today's orders shipped out as soon as possible. I did a quick calculation. The items I'd sold so far would bring in nearly $2 million. Once the buyers confirmed receipt, the money would be in my account. A few more sales, and I'd have enough for a down payment on a small condo. I could finally be a homeowner. The thought filled me with a sudden burst of energy. I set aside my writing for the moment and started browsing real estate websites for listings in New York. I had to be very careful in choosing my first property. I got so absorbed in my search that it was suddenly almost noon. I didn't even close the browser tabs before rushing to the kitchen to start cooking. Chloe had said she was coming home for lunch, and I'd gotten so lost in daydreaming about my future that I'd completely lost track of time. I'd planned on making dumplings for lunch. I had prepared the filling this morning and bought the wrappers yesterday, so I fell into an easy, practiced rhythm, folding one every few seconds. In no time, I had a tray of more than 20 ready to go. I was in the middle of folding when Chloe got home. I was so focused I didn't even look up. "You're back." "I am," she said from the doorway. "What are you doing?" From her angle, she could only see my hands moving quickly, not what I was making. "Making dumplings. We're having them for lunch. I'll pan-fry some flatbread to go with them so we have enough to eat," I said casually. Making both dumplings and flatbread from scratch was definitely a step above basic home cooking. Chloe's suspicion flared up again, but then she looked at me, sitting there quietly, skillfully folding the dumplings. The afternoon sun filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a soft glow around me. The scene was so peaceful, so domestic, that her doubts seemed to melt away. "You know, I haven't had these in a very long time," Chloe said, almost to herself. She seemed surprised by her own words, quickly fell silent, hung up her coat, and then disappeared into the bathroom to wash her hands as if to cover her momentary lapse. I didn't pick up on her odd behavior at all. I loved dumplings myself, and I figured with everything she'd been dealing with, food was the last thing on her mind. Besides, they weren't exactly a staple, so it made sense she hadn't had them in a while. "Do you want extra, then? If you're hungry, I can cook more. I'll freeze the rest, and we can have them on a day when we don't feel like cooking." "Yes, cook some more," Chloe said, emerging from the bathroom. She hadn't eaten something so simple and comforting in ages, probably not for 3 or 4 years. If I hadn't brought it up, she might not have even realized how long it had been since she'd allowed herself to just relax. "All right, I'll make a bigger batch," I said, my hands never slowing down. To me, life was about finding hope and small joys. You make your own happiness. Just getting a second chance at life was an incredible gift, and every moment should be cherished. Being able to sit here, making and eating dumplings, that was happiness. About an hour later, 2 steaming bowls of dumplings were on the table. I called Chloe out to eat. She was greeted by the sight of 2 bowls of fragrant dumplings in broth, garnished with scallions. They were plump and inviting. Alongside them was a plate of crispy flatbread and a few small side dishes. I was already seated and gestured for her to join me. I couldn't hide my eager smile. "Go on, try them. I think they turned out pretty well. I wasn't sure how hungry you'd be, and dumplings aren't always that filling, so I made the flatbread too. You can make little wraps with them." Chloe seemed amused by my explanation but didn't let it show. "Of course, I'm not helpless," she said, sitting down. She tried a dumpling, chewing thoughtfully before delivering her verdict. "They're quite good. See? I told you they were good. It's one of my favorite things to make. Since you like them, eat up." We ate at different paces, and even though she ate only half as much as I did, we finished around the same time. As I stood up to clear the plates, she suddenly said, "I'm going to order a dishwasher." I was already halfway to the kitchen with the bowls. "There's no need for that," I said quickly. "It's just a few dishes, it's no trouble at all. No need to spend the money. It's not that much money." "It's fine," she replied dismissively. A conflicted look immediately crossed my face. "What is it?" Chloe asked, noticing my expression. She still hadn't fully adjusted her mindset. She didn't seem to realize that a dishwasher was a luxury we couldn't afford. I debated whether to remind her of our financial situation, but seeing the slight frown on her face, I changed my tune. "Okay then, I'll look into getting one. Don't worry about it. I'm really picky about appliances, so it might take me a while to find the right one." I sighed internally. Beautiful people really did have it easy. I couldn't even bring myself to say something that might hurt her pride. Oh well, I just told her I was picky. It would be perfectly normal if my search for the perfect dishwasher took a very, very long time. Seeing my conflicted expression, Chloe suddenly understood exactly what I was worried about, and a strange feeling washed over her. Her grandfather had forced her to experience poverty as part of her upbringing, but after she turned 15 and completed his training, she had never once had to worry about money again. This time was different. It wasn't that she was broke, but that her husband in name only thought she was. And even then, he was trying to protect her pride by not saying it out loud. It was a strange, novel feeling, one she couldn't quite put her finger on. Chloe didn't say anything more to me. She just mentioned she had work to do and returned to her room, leaving me alone with the dishes. I, for one, was feeling pretty good about life. I was even humming to myself as I washed the plates. I had a roof over my head, food to eat, the watches and clothes were selling well, and soon I'd have my own place. Life was definitely looking up. Chloe was brilliant. It was only a matter of time before she made a comeback. And when she did, maybe she'd throw a little something my way for not abandoning her. After all, she'd been generous even when she was broke. She'd surely be even more so when she was rich again. The thought made me smile. And even if she never got back on top, it didn't matter. I could support us. For now, I had Chloe, who was something close to a friend, so I didn't have to worry about facing an emergency alone. She wouldn't stay idle forever. We could live a simple life, and whenever she decided she wanted a divorce, I'd grant it. Then I could move on, find someone new, and we could both go our separate ways. That sounded pretty good too. After finishing the dishes, I wrote for a little while longer before getting ready for my nap. Just then, Chloe's door opened. "Did Julian Vance give you a hard time today?" she asked. Realizing what she was referring to, I hesitated. "It wasn't a big deal. He told me I should divorce you, and I refused. I assumed you weren't interested in him, but if you are, we can get a divorce whenever you want. He said his father would help you, provided you two get married." As soon as the words were out of my mouth, Chloe replied slowly, "I have no interest in him, and I would never divorce you for his sake. You handled it well. As for everything else, we can discuss it later. I don't need anyone's help right now, and these problems are not something his father can solve anyway." "I understand," I said, nodding. That made sense. I stood up to go take my nap. "Is there anything else?" Chloe looked at me with a curious expression. "When did you start taking afternoon naps?" Crap. The original Ethan had kept terrible hours, while I'd been on a regular schedule since I arrived. The difference was stark. Well, I just realized how unhealthy my old habits were. My health was suffering, so I'm forcing myself to get on a better schedule. You should try it, actually. A short nap can make you much more productive in the afternoon. Chloe didn't comment. "Well, you get your rest," she said, before returning to her room. I stood there, feeling anxious, replaying my words in my head. I hadn't said anything wrong, had I? After a major life event like your family going bankrupt, it's only natural for a person to change. Back in her room, Chloe sat expressionlessly at her desk, lost in thought. After a moment, still seemingly undecided, she picked up her phone and made a call. "Order a dishwasher and have it delivered here in the next few days. I need more time to observe things. Until then, we'll proceed as we have been." After the call, Chloe placed her phone on the desk. Her eyes fell on her bed, and she remembered what her supposed husband had said. A nap, huh? Was it really so beneficial? Before she knew it, she had stretched out on the bed herself. As her body relaxed, a small smile touched her lips. It actually felt quite nice. The last time she'd taken a nap was probably 3 or 4 years ago. She'd been so busy for so long, she couldn't remember the last time she truly rested. Before I knew it, it was 2:30 p.m. I emerged from my room, stretched, and went to splash some water on my face. As I stepped out of the bathroom, Chloe was coming out of her room, her eyes still hazy with sleep. The look, combined with her stunning features, was enough to make any man's heart stop. I immediately looked down at the floor. Good Lord, did she always look like this after a nap? She was breathtaking. It was hard to believe this woman was the villain of the story. The author must have spent a lot of time crafting her character, only to give her such a tragic end. What a waste. Lost in thought, I didn't realize that my expression had softened into one of pity. Chloe noticed it, and the look seemed to sting her. She quickly averted her eyes. "Did you need the bathroom?" No, I'm done. It's all yours," I said, stepping aside so she could pass. I shrugged and went back to my laptop to get some writing done. The moment I opened Instagram, I saw a new follow request. The bio said they were an editor from a web novel platform. My manuscript must have passed the first round of reviews, but an editor wouldn't normally reach out on Instagram just for that. Chloe must have heard my sharp intake of breath, because she came out of the bathroom, drying her hands. "What is it?" "My novel passed the first review," I blurted out, ecstatic. "Once it gets through the next 2 rounds, it'll start making money." Chloe looked at my shining, expectant eyes, and her expression softened. "Is that so? Well, congratulations. It's good news for both of us." I beamed, my face lighting up. Then, I immediately turned my attention back to my story, completely absorbed. Anyone could see I was fired up and ready to work. Chloe went back into the bathroom, a slight frown on her face. She didn't think anyone could fake the kind of pure, unadulterated joy she had just seen in my eyes. The old greed, ambition, and confusion were gone, as if they had never existed. Could a person really change that drastically overnight, to the point of becoming someone else entirely? There was no easy answer, so she decided to put it out of her mind. After finishing up in the bathroom, she got ready to leave. She glanced over at me one last time and saw me still lost in my work, a contented smile on my face. I need to have him investigated after all. Chloe made up her mind. She couldn't waste any more time or energy on this issue. She would find out the truth. If he had genuinely changed, then perhaps there was no harm in letting him stay. He was, after all, her husband in name, and he'd never done anything truly unforgivable. I was oblivious to her decision, still buzzing with excitement over my novel. The thought of future royalties made me giddy with happiness. The money from selling the luxury goods, however, felt different. It didn't feel like mine. It was money Chloe had spent on the original Ethan. Now that he was gone, it was rightfully Chloe's money. The only reason I planned to buy the condo in my name was because I knew she wouldn't fight me on it. And if something were to happen to her down the line, at least we'd have a place to live that was safe from creditors. I had no intention of keeping it for myself. I'd use my own earnings to pay the mortgage, and the condo would belong to both of us. If my writing took off, I could save up and buy another one. If Chloe wanted the condo, she could slowly pay me back for the mortgage payments. I'd never pressure her for the money. I'd consider it repayment for her not abandoning me. I had my future all planned out. I happily checked my eBay page again. Excellent, several more items had sold. I scheduled another pickup, and this time, a young woman from the courier service arrived. The courier was a bit shy. "Mr. Ethan," she began, "did you open an online shop? These watches all look really nice. I was wondering if it's possible, could you sell one to me at a discount? I want to get a gift for my boyfriend." I was taken aback and quickly waved my hands. "Oh, I'm sorry, it's not my shop. I'm just helping a friend ship these out. And I think they're pretty expensive, like tens of thousands of dollars each. I can't make that call, but I could ask my friend for you if you'd like." Her eyes widened. "Tens of thousands? Wow, so they're luxury watches, then." "I guess so," I said. "I don't really know much about them, just that they're expensive." Just as I said that, the elevator doors opened, and Chloe stepped out. She had clearly overheard our conversation. "Is something wrong?" she asked, walking toward us. "It's nothing. This young lady was interested in buying one of the watches, but I told her they're not mine. I was just offering to ask my friend if he could give her a discount," I explained quickly, hoping Chloe would catch my drift and not blow my cover. The courier, having already heard the price, knew it was way out of her league. "Oh, no, it's okay," she interjected. "If they're luxury items, then never mind. I couldn't afford something like that anyway. Are these all the packages? If so, I'll just get them scanned and be on my way." "Yes, that's all of them. Thank you." I knew it was a smaller batch than before. The original Ethan had bought a wide variety of watches. The popular models sold quickly at the beginning, but the more obscure ones would be harder to move. "No trouble at all," she said, before hoisting the bag of packages and disappearing into the elevator. It was only then that I realized I'd been blocking the doorway, preventing Chloe from getting in. I quickly stepped inside to let her pass. "You're back early," I commented. "I didn't have much to do today," she said, changing her shoes and hanging up her coat. Then she asked, seemingly offhand, "Why did you say the watches belonged to a friend?" It didn't feel right to say they were mine. We don't know how secure this building is. I don't want to advertise that we have valuable things here. Could be dangerous. Besides, that courier company has been here a few times now. They're starting to recognize me. If I told them the watches were mine and then refused to give a big discount, they might get resentful and accidentally damage a package. Sure, I could file a claim, but it's a huge hassle. You can never really know what people are thinking, so it's better to be cautious. Chloe once again felt like she was looking at a complete stranger. The old Ethan had been naive and gullible, constantly getting ripped off when he went shopping and completely lacking any sense of caution. Her friends had warned her about it countless times, always lamenting that she had married such a clueless fool. But this Ethan, the one standing before her now, was so cautious and thoughtful about even the smallest things. He was nothing like the fool she'd married. "That's very thorough of you," Chloe remarked, her casual tone belying a hint of warmth. "You have to be. Life isn't easy. It's good to be kind, but you can't be naive. Better to avoid trouble when you can." I was so used to being independent and self-reliant that this kind of caution was second nature to me. I didn't think anything of it, and so I completely missed the dark, calculating glint that flashed in Chloe's eyes. "There's a gala in a few days that we need to attend together. You should get ready," Chloe announced as she came in, hanging up her coat. I tensed up immediately. "A gala? I've never really been to one of those. Won't I just cause problems for you if I go?" It wasn't that I hadn't been to many. I had been to zero. The kind of event Chloe attended was bound to be a high-powered corporate affair. I was completely out of my league and would probably just embarrass her. The only galas I'd ever attended were company holiday parties and author conventions. As one of my publisher's top authors, I was always well taken care of at those events. Staff members handled everything. Being thrown into a real high society event felt like a challenge I was not equipped to handle. "It doesn't matter," Chloe said dismissively, pouring herself a glass of water. "At this point, no one can cause me any more trouble than I already have." and even if they could, I wouldn't care. Her words left a bitter taste in my mouth. It used to be that everyone in the room watched her for cues. Now, she would be the one watching others. I was about to refuse, but I swallowed my objections and nodded. I told her I would get ready. We were husband and wife after all. If she had to go out and face their judgment, the least I could do was go with her. Even though I wasn't the one who had spent all her money, I was in the body of the man who did. It amounted to the same thing. For the next 2 days, Chloe kept her usual schedule of leaving early and coming home late, but she was always home for breakfast and dinner. I got into the routine of cooking for her, while spending my days writing, managing my online sales, and frantically Googling high society gala etiquette. The problem was, the kind of people who attended these events weren't the type to post how-to guides online. After days of searching, I had come up with absolutely nothing useful. I scrolled through the contacts on the phone and saw a lot of names of the original Ethan's friends. One of them might know what to expect, but they were all just drinking buddies, not real friends. Calling them now would be incredibly awkward for an imposter like me, and they'd probably just make fun of me. Plus, asking such basic questions would be a dead giveaway that something was wrong. I dug through my memories and realized that after attending one similar event right after their wedding, he had never been invited to another. It was painfully obvious. Chloe had been too embarrassed to be seen with him in public. Since I was getting nowhere with my research, I decided to focus on what I could control, my outfit. I pulled out a few suits from the collection I hadn't sold yet, but I had absolutely no idea which one was appropriate. After agonizing over it for a while, I finally gave up and decided to ask Chloe for help. So that evening, when Chloe walked in, she found me not on the floor with my laptop as usual. Instead, the moment she opened the door, I was staring at her with an intense, slightly desperate expression. My intense stare clearly made her uncomfortable. "What is it?" she asked, her eyes falling on the suits I had laid out on the sofa. "Why are all these clothes out? I need your help. I haven't been to an event like this in ages, and I have no idea what to wear." I picked out a few options. "Can you tell me which one is best?" I made no attempt to hide my cluelessness. This probably wouldn't be the last time something like this came up, and since I couldn't fake my way through it, it was better to just be honest from the start. "I thought you always insisted on choosing your own clothes," Chloe said, her mind clearly on my past behavior and the pending results of her investigation. That was then. My whole world had just been turned upside down, and I was a little insecure. Picking my own clothes was a way to hold on to some dignity. But I've realized now that it's pointless to be so defensive. It's better to just admit when you don't know something. "It seems you have thought it through," she conceded. "So, which of these suits works?" "I really can't decide," I said, stepping aside to give her a better view of my selections. Looking at the tasteful, understated suits I had chosen, Chloe nodded internally. Whether he had truly seen the light or had some other motive, at least he wasn't being an idiot. Unlike before, when he would always pick the most flamboyant, over-the-top outfits, making him look like he was heading to a fashion show instead of a corporate event. She looked them over and pointed to a classic black suit. "Wear that one. It's low-key." Her choice immediately told me what to expect. We were walking into a hostile environment. It wouldn't matter what I wore. People would find a reason to look down on me. So, blending in was the smartest option. "All right, the black one it is," I said, putting the other suits away. When it was time to leave, there was no driver waiting for us like there used to be. This time, Chloe drove us herself. It was my first time alone in a car with her. Watching the city's neon lights blur past, the feeling of surrealness washed over me again. I had deliberately sat in the back seat, hoping to avoid any difficult conversations. But it seemed I wasn't going to be that lucky. I'm sure she never imagined she'd be chauffeuring her useless husband to a gala, just as I never imagined I'd be in this position. The silence in the car felt heavy, so when it became clear I wasn't going to speak, Chloe broke it herself. "Aren't you cold, dressed like that?" "I'm fine," I answered quickly. "It's a suit, after all." She glanced at my nervous reflection in the rearview mirror, and a mischievous glint appeared in her eyes. "You know," she said, "I feel like you've been acting a little strange around me lately." "How so?" I replied automatically, forcing a polite smile. "We have no reason to be at odds. You've been very good to me, and I'm grateful. It's just, we never spent much time together before. Now we see each other every day. I'm just not used to it yet. I'll adjust." Chloe was about to say something else, but then she saw me in the mirror, my fake smile gone, replaced by a look of genuine confusion as I rubbed the back of my neck. She suddenly lost the desire to continue the conversation. Perhaps she was pushing too much, too soon. Until her investigation was complete, she should hold back. For now, at least, this new version of her husband hadn't done anything to harm her. We drove the rest of the way in silence and soon arrived at the Plaza Hotel. We had just reached the entrance when a man deliberately blocked our path. He was slightly overweight with greasy hair, a lavishly dressed woman on his arm, and a smirk on his face that oozed ill intent. I had no idea what was happening, so I glanced at Chloe. Without even looking at the man, she said coolly, "That property on the east side. I hear Sterling's main competitor is looking at it very closely. Shouldn't you be paying attention to that, Mr. Lawson?" The man, Mr. Lawson, was clearly taken aback. He'd been shut down before he could even speak, and his face contorted for a moment. After a few seconds of internal struggle, he managed to force out, "Miss Sterling, you look as lovely as ever. It's been too long." Chloe didn't grace him with a response. She simply took my arm and steered me around him. I could feel his simmering frustration behind us, but what struck me more was Chloe's powerful aura. It was the first time I'd seen it in full force. I was a bit stunned and just let her lead me into the ballroom. The moment we stepped inside, I recognized several faces from the original Ethan's memories. They were his old drinking buddies, all of them either husbands or sons of wealthy women, and none of them particularly respected. A few of them spotted me and started to head over, drinks in hand. But as soon as they saw Chloe by my side, they quickly backed off. A couple of them tried to catch my eye, gesturing for me to join them, but I hesitated and stayed put. In this world, a change in status could mean everything. Besides, those guys had only ever hung out with me because I was Chloe's husband. Now that she was supposedly ruined, I highly doubted they had any loyalty to me. The decent ones might offer a few words of sympathy. The jerks would just use me as a punching bag to make themselves feel superior. I wasn't about to walk into that kind of ambush. "You're not going to go say hello?" Chloe's sudden question made me jump. I shook my head. "Why would I? That's just asking for trouble," I said, trying to make a joke of it. We were never real friends anyway. Now that things have changed, it's better to just keep our distance. Chloe seemed to approve. This version of her husband wasn't as stupid as she'd thought. She couldn't understand why he'd ever wasted his time with those losers in the first place. "Fine, then don't," she said. We'd only taken a few steps when two more men, each with a woman on his arm, approached us. The one in the lead was a bit older, maybe around 30, and he wore a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Well, if it isn't Miss Sterling. It's been a while, and this must be, forgive me, my memory isn't what it used to be. Your husband, is that right? It's so rare to see you two out together. What's the occasion? Times getting tough? I'd always heard you two weren't close, but I guess those were just rumors." At first, his words didn't register, but as a writer, I was good at reading between the lines. I quickly understood his insinuations. The way his slimy gaze lingered on Chloe made my skin crawl. I wanted to punch him. Chloe's eyes went cold as ice. "Mr. Thorne, it's been so long. I was beginning to think you were unwell. Smart people learn from their mistakes. Others, well, they seem determined to repeat them until they're completely destroyed. Wouldn't you agree?" His face soured for a second before he plastered the fake smile back on. "You're absolutely right, but sometimes what was once a pitfall becomes a diamond in the rough. And when people see a diamond, they naturally want to pick it up. I'm sure you understand what I mean. By the way, I heard you've had some business troubles lately. Just a friendly reminder, since we're old acquaintances. Sometimes the greatest asset isn't money, but people." I instinctively clenched my fists and stepped in front of Chloe. The guy was a disgusting pig. I was ready to hit him. Chloe was about to respond, but another voice cut in. "What do you think you're doing?" At the sound of the new voice, both men's faces fell, and they took a simultaneous step back. "Just mingling," I heard Chloe say from behind me. I turned and saw a stunningly fashionable young woman approaching. I recognized her immediately, Scarlett Fisher, the biggest movie star in the country and one of Chloe's best friends. "What do you two think you're doing?" Scarlett demanded. "Since when is my friend someone you can just harass?" Have the Thorne and Smith families completely lost their sense of decorum? True to her reputation, her sharp tongue had an immediate effect. The two men looked even more uncomfortable than before. Mr. Thorne started to speak, but Scarlett cut him off impatiently. "What, are you waiting for a written invitation to leave? You think I'm as patient as Chloe?" The two men didn't say a word. They just nodded and beat a hasty retreat, dragging their dates with them. "Chloe, honestly," Scarlett said, turning to us, "if you were coming, why did you bring him? And you didn't even give me a heads up. Those two morons actually had the nerve to bother you. You're way too patient. It's nothing. They're just clowns," Chloe said, her tone softening considerably as she spoke to her friend. A hint of a smile even touched her eyes. "But what about you? You never come to these things. Why are you here tonight?" Scarlett pouted. I was worried you'd show up and have to deal with idiots like them. I had to pull a lot of strings to get out of another event tonight, and it's a good thing I did. Who knows what else those creeps would have said." Then, she turned her appraising gaze on me, looking me up and down. I glanced at my suit. It was fine. I touched my hair. It was fine. I looked back at her, confused, just in time to catch the look of faint disgust on her face. Scarlett glared at me. "Given Chloe's current situation, there's no more money for you to leech off her, so you can drop the act and get lost." I managed a weak, awkward smile. If it had been anyone else, I might have said something back. But this was Chloe's best friend, and she was just looking out for her. What could I say? Besides, given my past, her suspicions were understandable. "Don't be ridiculous. We're not divorced," Chloe said, cutting Scarlett off. She didn't elaborate, just said, "Come on, let's go find a place to sit." Scarlett rolled her eyes. "Fine, I'll come with you." With Scarlett here, whatever Chloe had planned for the evening would have to wait. Scarlett was the youngest of her friends, and she tended to be more impulsive and hot-headed than the others. The others knew to give Chloe her space tonight, but Scarlett had come purely because she was worried Chloe would be harassed. As the youngest, she was a bit spoiled by the others, and she never bothered to hide her feelings. That bluntness, combined with her powerful family, made most people afraid to cross her. The only people who would dare to bother Chloe here were clueless idiots like the ones we just encountered. Everyone else, no matter how stupid, knew that Chloe was not someone to be trifled with. She might be down now, but she could easily make a comeback, and it was foolish to make an enemy of her. With Scarlett sitting with us, no one else dared to approach. Anyone who was anyone knew that Scarlett Fisher was not to be crossed. She had a fiery temper and wasn't afraid to make a scene. I had braced myself for a night of awkward encounters, but we had only been sitting for a little while before Chloe said it was time to leave. Scarlett tried to convince her to stay, but Chloe refused, and we headed home. The entire night, besides those first 3 jerks, people just offered a polite nod when they saw Chloe and then moved on. I had no idea why she had wanted to come to this gala in the first place. Sitting in the car on the way home, I remembered how, in the past, Chloe used to be the center of attention at these events, with people constantly flocking to her. Tonight, no one had approached her except Scarlett. Watching her drive, I thought she seemed almost liberated. After a full 3 minutes of deliberation, I finally worked up the nerve to ask, "Did you accomplish what you came here to do tonight?" Her voice was low when she answered, "More or less." She hadn't done anything, yet she said she'd accomplished her goal. I would never understand how people like her operated. Maybe she just wanted to show everyone she wasn't completely broken? No, a woman like her, raised with the best of everything, wouldn't be that petty. Since the mood wasn't too heavy, I decided to bring up something more positive. "So, I've sold most of those watches and clothes, and we have a decent amount of cash now. I was thinking, since all the assets are liquidated and we're debt-free, maybe we should buy a small condo. We could make a down payment and I could cover the mortgage with my royalties. We'd keep enough for 6 months of living expenses, and you could use the rest as seed money for a new business." Chloe was visibly stunned. She had clearly never expected to hear something like this from me. She saw my eager expression in the rearview mirror, as if I was genuinely happy to be offering her the money. "There's no rush," she said, her eyes back on the road. "What do you mean, no rush? The market is going crazy. The longer we wait, the more expensive it will get. Renting isn't a long-term solution. If it makes you feel better, we can put the title in your name. The important thing is to have a place of our own, so we'll never have to worry about being homeless." It was the first time I had ever been so insistent about anything. Chloe was silent for a moment. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll think about it." That was good enough for me. I breathed a sigh of relief. Her taste was impeccable. Whatever she chose would be far better than anything I could find. With her on board, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. What I didn't know was that later that night, while I was in my room writing, Chloe received a phone call. "Chloe, I have the information you wanted. I just sent an encrypted file to your email. No one else has seen it. Take a look." Her laptop was open to her email inbox. Her lips, the subject of countless men's fantasies, let out a soft sigh. Her fingers tapped a restless rhythm on the desk, her brow furrowed in thought. After a long moment, she picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Hello, is this Dr. Wallace? I have a hypothetical question. Is it possible for a person, without suffering from dissociative identity disorder or schizophrenia, to undergo a complete and sudden transformation, to the point where their habits, their personality, their entire worldview, seem to have been replaced overnight?" A few minutes later, she hung up. She leaned back in her chair, and a slow smile spread across her previously expressionless face. A soul swap? The next morning, as she calmly finished her bagel, Chloe looked up at me with a newfound interest. So, what kind of stories do you write? I was happily munching on my own bagel and paused mid-bite. My stories? A little bit of everything, I guess. I don't like to stick to one genre, but my favorites are time travel and portal fantasies. I love stories about people ending up in different worlds. Do you think that kind of travel between worlds is actually possible? She asked, her gaze intensifying. I was completely oblivious to the subtext. Thinking of my own situation, I nodded seriously. Yeah, I think it's possible. Who's to say what reality really is? We think our world is real, but for all we know, we could just be characters in someone else's story. If we can't even be sure of that, how can we be sure that traveling between worlds is impossible? Chloe paused, her spoon halfway to her mouth. Characters in a story? Sure, I said. Think about it. Everyone's life is its own story, and we're all the main characters. I'd had that thought before. Of course, my own experience proved that I was just a minor character in someone else's narrative. Of course, I added, in other people's stories we might just be background characters, or even the villain. So, if you were one of those travelers, Chloe pressed, what do you think your past life would have been like? I tilted my head, my own past life flashing before my eyes. I think I was a pretty happy person. I had loving parents, I was an only child, and I had the freedom to pursue my passions. My parents passed away unexpectedly, but I still had a good life. I studied a subject I loved, and I never had to worry about money. As for how I'd end up in another world, it would probably be something ridiculously unlucky, like getting stabbed by a mugger while trying to help someone. The words brought back the memory with painful clarity. I was just trying to get a woman's purse back. I never expected the mugger to pull a knife. I'd lived a good life, never hurt anyone, and that's how it ended. If I hadn't woken up here, in this book, with a second chance, I would have been furious at the injustice of it all. Chloe herself didn't know why she suddenly felt a sense of relief. Perhaps it was something in my words. From the moment we first met until now, every aspect of my personality and character had been completely different from the man she married. My occasional, clumsy attempts at deception were as transparent as a child playing dress-up in adult clothes to someone like her, who was an expert at reading people. If it weren't for my consistent kindness and good manners, she might have already sent me to see that Dr. Wallace. Of course, I was oblivious to all this. That's certainly an unlucky way to go, Chloe said, taking a spoonful of oatmeal. Thinking of how the previous Ethan had died because of his kindness, she couldn't help but add, that's why you have to think before you act. Even when you're trying to help, you have to know your limits. I nodded emphatically. You're absolutely right. That's a crucial lesson. Criminals are ruthless these days. It's a lesson I learned the hard way with my own life. She really was a good person. She wasn't saying you shouldn't be kind, just that you should be smart about it. Her moral compass was solid. We didn't bring up the topic again. After breakfast, Chloe left, and I settled in to write. She wasn't coming home for lunch, so I happily ordered some takeout for myself. I made sure to clean up and take out the trash as soon as I was done. I couldn't recall Chloe ever ordering takeout. She probably considered it junk food, so it was best she didn't see the evidence. The afternoon followed my new routine, ship out the sold items, then head to the supermarket for groceries. As I walked the aisles, it struck me that my life now wasn't so different from my previous one. I hadn't picked up any side gigs yet, and there was another person in my orbit, but otherwise it felt remarkably the same. I was still a homebody who went out for errands, living a quiet life. It was probably rare for a dimension-hopping protagonist to be so laid back. Then again, how many protagonists arrive after the story is already over? I had no future knowledge to exploit, no get-rich-quick schemes to follow. Just as I was lost in thought, an older woman next to me spoke up. Hey, aren't you that young man who was being harassed by that awful girl the other day? Out doing your shopping. I turned and didn't recognize her, but I instantly knew what she was referring to. She must have been one of the women from the group that had lectured Tiffany. Oh, hello, I said. Yes, just picking up a few things for dinner. That's wonderful. Not many young men know how to cook these days. Your wife is a lucky woman. Not at all, I said, shaking my head. She's the one working hard all day, so I'm just doing my part around the house. I'm the lucky one to have met her. The original Ethan was the truly lucky one, finding a woman as forgiving as Chloe. Anyone else would have kicked him to the curb long ago. Even in my past life, I'd seen plenty of wealthy couples who, at the first sign of trouble, would saddle their partner with all the debt and run. You see, as long as you have a grateful heart, life will treat you well, the woman said, shifting into full-on advice mode. It's a rare thing for a young man like you to have that kind of perspective. If your wife is the same, I'm sure you two will have a wonderful life together. You're right, I said with a smile, finally selecting a head of broccoli. I'm sure my wife will get back on her feet one day, and even if she doesn't, that's okay too. This life is pretty good. Well, I'd better go get this weighed. It was nice talking to you. You go on, dear. The lines are long today, she said with a friendly smile. I'd only taken a few steps away when someone fell into step beside me, but I didn't notice until a hand tapped my shoulder. I'll take that. I jumped, startled, and turned to see Chloe standing there. What are you doing here? I asked, surprised. I finished up early and needed to pick up a few things. I just happened to see you. What she didn't mention was that on her way home, she'd run into the courier from the other day, who had cheerfully asked why she wasn't at the supermarket with me. Her curiosity piqued. She'd invented an excuse about needing printer paper and had come over, just in time to see me from a distance. And if she hadn't, she would have missed our entire conversation. Chloe found the situation amusing. This strange boy who now inhabited her husband's body was adapting remarkably well, with an attitude that was both relaxed and optimistic. If not for the polite distance they'd maintained, one might think they were actually close. A man like him, so unconcerned with personal gain and so indifferent to her status, was a rarity. She had to admit she respected it. It's fine. I've only got a few vegetables. It's not heavy. Don't worry about it. You go get what you need. I saw some nice tomatoes over there. I was thinking of making those sweet and sour ribs again. It's fine. I've only got a few vegetables. It's not heavy. Don't worry about it. You go get what you need. I saw some nice tomatoes over there. I was thinking of making that roasted chicken again. Chloe had a fondness for tangy flavors, though not for jealousy. She'd noticed the meals at home had been suiting her palate more and more. They weren't gourmet, but they had a certain home-cooked quality that no restaurant could replicate. She suspected I had been observing her preferences and tailoring the meals accordingly, and she had to admit she was enjoying it. We picked up a few more ingredients and some snacks before Chloe got her paper, and then we headed to the checkout. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut in. Well, hello again, young man, and this must be your lovely wife. My, isn't she a beauty? I handed my card to the cashier. It was the same woman from the produce aisle. Her eyes lit up when she saw Chloe. I've truly never seen such a beautiful young woman. You're prettier than a movie star. No wonder you wouldn't leave her. That other one who was bothering you can't hold a candle to your wife. She's not as pretty, has none of the class. I can't imagine what she was thinking, coming after you. I sucked in a sharp breath, my heart pounding. It was humiliating enough to have my ex-girlfriend show up and cause a scene, especially one with such bad intentions. But for it to be brought up right in front of Chloe felt like a dagger to the heart. This was a disaster. Chloe shot me a look loaded with meaning. I could only offer a weak, awkward smile. You're right, ma'am. There's no comparison. I'd have to be insane to ever get involved with someone like that again. She was up to no good, but thankfully, I'm not as naive as I used to be. In just a few sentences, I had managed to explain the situation and make my position clear. For the first time, I felt like I might actually be getting smarter. Chloe remained silent, her mind clearly replaying my defiant speech to Tiffany. The woman nodded in approval. Yes, you're a smart young man. The cashier finished ringing us up and handed my card back. Here you go, sir. I took the card, said a quick goodbye to the woman, and hurried out of the store with Chloe. I needed to explain everything, and fast. This could easily blow up in my face if I didn't handle it right. The moment we were out the door, I started talking. So, you probably already know this, but before we got married, I had an ex-girlfriend. Her name is Tiffany Reed. I was young and naive back in college, and I fell for the wrong kind of person. We broke up long before I met you, and I haven't had any contact with her since. But the other day, she showed up right after I left the supermarket. I knew she was up to no good, so I shut her down immediately when she asked me to leave with her. That woman in the store was one of the people who stepped in to help. Chloe nodded, unfazed. Tiffany Reed, second daughter of the Reed Corporation. I've heard she's notoriously cheap. That's an understatement. She acted so high and mighty, like she was better than everyone. Back then, the old me thought she was this amazing, accomplished person, so he felt kind of insecure around her. Then he found out she was just playing him, that she was actually interested in one of his friends. I could feel a surge of anger on his behalf. I can't stand people like that. To Chloe, it must have sounded like I was defending the honor of the man whose life I'd taken. I, of course, was oblivious to this nuance. When she didn't respond right away, the silence felt awkward. Finally, she said, just stay away from her from now on. Don't worry, I will, I said firmly. Wasting a single second on a person like that is a waste of a perfectly good life. Back at the apartment, I started prepping for dinner. To my utter shock, Chloe walked into the kitchen. "Do you need any help?" she asked. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The great villainess, offering to cook? I couldn't even fathom it. Better not risk it. If she messed it up, I just have to do it all over again myself. "No, thanks. I've got it under control," I said. "You've got enough on your plate. Go do what you need to do. I'll call you when dinner's ready." She gave a slight nod and strode out of the kitchen. I tied on my apron and got back to work. We were already home later than usual, and if I didn't hurry, dinner would be delayed. I wanted to get some writing done later. Once the meal was cooked and on the table, I went and knocked on Chloe's door. Chloe released her mouse, closed her browser tabs, and came out to eat. We usually ate in silence. I never felt the need to force a conversation, and neither, it seemed, did she. We coexisted, each doing our own thing, only speaking when necessary. Our meals were typically quiet affairs, but tonight was an exception. As soon as she sat down, Chloe announced, "Someone is coming to install the dishwasher tomorrow." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "A dishwasher? You bought one? I thought I was gonna look for one. You said you were picky and it would take a long time, so I chose one for you. All you have to do is use it." Now that Chloe understood more about my situation, her guard was down. She was starting to make our living situation more comfortable. Besides, it wasn't like I owed her anything. In fact, I'd been nothing but helpful. I didn't know what to say. Maybe she didn't want to feel indebted to me for doing the dishes, or maybe a dishwasher was just a trivial expense to her. "Okay then, I'll make sure I'm home tomorrow." The conversation died down, and we were about to resume eating when my phone rang. It had rung maybe twice since I'd arrived in this world. I picked it up and saw it was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, Ethan, my man. Long time no see. You want to hang out tomorrow?" The voice on the other end was loud and boisterous. I recognized it immediately. It was Spencer Nash, the ringleader of the original Ethan's posse of fake friends. The guy was a classic two-faced jerk, always acting like my best friend while leading me into trouble and then laughing about it behind my back. "I think I'll pass," I said. "We were never really friends, Spencer. You just want to see me miserable. But my head's a little clearer these days, and I'm not in the mood to be your entertainment. You should save your energy and worry about your own love life." It was a well-known fact that Spencer's playboy antics had made him undateable. If he wanted to mock my misfortune, I had no problem hitting him where it hurt. I could practically hear Spencer's face darken over the phone, but he quickly recovered, his voice turning smooth and sympathetic. "Ethan, you've got it all wrong. I would never laugh at you. I know you're going through a tough time, and I just wanted to be there for you. Don't mistake my concern for something else." "Concern? Fine. If you're so concerned, then you'll understand that what I need most right now is peace and quiet. So please, leave me alone." I didn't believe a word he said, but as I was about to hang up, I looked up and saw Chloe mouthing two words at me. "Say yes." I froze, confused. Why on earth would she want me to meet with Spencer? But I trusted her signal and, against my better judgment, agreed to the invitation. I had no idea what she was planning, but my gut told me she had her reasons. The meetup was at a private club downtown, where Spencer and his cronies were already waiting. The moment they saw me, their eyes filled with the smug contempt of people ready for a spectacle. Spencer slung a fake friendly arm around my shoulders. "Ethan, glad you could make it. Man, you look rough. What's wrong? Now that Chloe's broke, can't even afford to eat." The group erupted in laughter. The old Ethan would have been mortified, but I just calmly removed his arm from my shoulder and smiled. "Thanks for your concern, Spencer. I'm eating just fine. In fact, there's something deeply satisfying about a home-cooked meal. It's not like some people, who have all the money in the world, but are so hollow inside they can only get their kicks from making fun of others." Spencer's smile froze. Before he could retort, I continued, "And you don't need to worry about my wife. Our life is our own. Whether it's hard or easy, that's for us to know. At the very least, we're living honestly and not indebted to anyone." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving them all standing there in stunned silence. What I didn't know was that Chloe's car was parked in the shadows just down the street, and she had seen everything. As she watched my retreating figure, her back held straight and proud, a flicker of something warm and unfamiliar stirred in her cool, composed eyes for the very first time. Maybe it was the stress and exhaustion of the past few weeks, but I collapsed with a high fever. In my delirium, I felt a cool cloth on my forehead and the gentle touch of a spoon feeding me warm broth. I managed to pry my eyes open and saw Chloe's face, etched with worry. "It's okay. I'm here," she whispered. The fever had stripped away all my defenses. I clung to her hand, my words a jumbled, feverish whisper. "So tired. Writing. Never thought I'd get a second chance. Can't end up like last time, stabbed." Chloe flinched, ever so slightly. She listened quietly as my nonsensical words tumbled out. The fragments about another world, a second chance, and being stabbed all clicked into place in her sharp mind, perfectly aligning with Dr. Wallace's assessment. It's not an act. It's a fundamental change in his very being. The last traces of doubt in her eyes vanished, replaced by a complex mix of heartache and understanding. She didn't press for details. She just held my hand a little tighter. Shortly after I recovered, the dishwasher Chloe had ordered arrived. The two of us spent half an hour poring over the instruction manual before attempting a clumsy installation. The results were predictable. We connected the hose to the wrong valve, flooding the kitchen floor. We used the wrong soap, and the moment we turned it on, the machine erupted, filling the room with a storm of bubbles. I slipped in the suds and landed hard on the floor, completely soaked. Chloe had foam all over her face. We looked at each other, seeing our own ridiculous reflections in the other's predicament, and we burst out laughing. It was a loud, genuine, liberating sound that washed away all the tension and distance that had been between us. When we finally stopped laughing, she sat down on the floor across from me, wiped the bubbles from her face, and looked at me seriously. "Ethan," she said, "there's something I need to tell you." She then confessed that her bankruptcy had been a half-truth. A real crisis, born from a power struggle within her family, had left her exhausted. She decided to use the situation to her advantage, faking a complete collapse to escape the pressure and, more importantly, to see how the spendthrift she'd married would react when he lost everything. She had the divorce papers all drawn up. "I never expected," she said, her eyes welling up, "that instead of his tantrums I would find you. A completely new you." She took a shaky breath. "I don't know who you are, or where you came from, but I know that your kindness, your optimism, your simple, everyday warmth, you made me feel alive again. I've fallen in love with the man you are now." In that moment, all my fears and pretenses washed away. I told her everything, the whole truth about who I was and how I got here. We were two lost souls, both scarred by our own worlds, who had found an unlikely sanctuary in this tiny apartment. After that, our life seemed to shift into fast forward. Julian Vance, ever persistent, tried to stage a hostile takeover of Chloe's remaining assets under the guise of helping her. He walked right into a trap she had laid, and she crushed his attempt with a secret fund no one knew she had, exposing his greed to the world. As for Tiffany Reed, she hired an army of bots and trolls to smear my novel online. But my loyal readers, along with a furious Scarlet Fisher, fought back. They dug up every shady thing Tiffany had ever done, and her reputation was ruined overnight. 1 year later, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our spacious, light-filled home office. The film rights to my novel had sold for an astronomical sum, more than enough to buy the house we'd always dreamed of. I was at my desk, outlining a new story, while Chloe sat across from me, elegantly reviewing the adaptation contract. She never went back to the cutthroat corporate world that had exhausted her. Instead, she became my brilliant agent and financial advisor. She set the contract down, came up behind me, and wrapped her arms around my neck, resting her chin on my shoulder. Looking at the words on my screen, she laughed softly. "And they said you only knew how to spend my money. Look at us now. You're the one supporting me." I smiled, taking her hand in mine, and turned to kiss her. Outside, the sun was shining, and life was peaceful. We didn't become titans of industry, but together, we built something sweeter and uniquely our own. A life filled with love, laughter, and a world that truly belonged to us. And that was the perfect ending.